Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm Bill Whittle. It is the 26th of June on the on a Thursday night. How about that? We're on time and on schedule for once. And as I was just mentioning to our friends over in the Twitch stream, we're going to be just going to let the room fill up a little bit because we got some cool stuff to talk about before we get into the questions and some more cool stuff to show you. I got my own little movie studio now, you see, and I don't have to just talk about these things. I can show instead of tell. So related to this, again, just as a kind of a intro for, I'll let people kind of catch up to the room here. It looks like New York City is going to get not only a socialist but an Islamic socialist, and I think that's actually great. He's going to make Bill de Blasio look like, William F. Buckley, I guess. And, if they want a guy whose name sounds like something you'd get off of a, penny arcade in Coney Island in 1916, measure your strength, put in a nickel, find your future. No, Marisha Dark said it. The beatings will continue until morale improves. The morale improved enormously in real America, in the actual United States of America, and then the city stayed blue, and Los Angeles stayed blue. Whether the fires will be enough to change people's minds in Los Angeles, we'll find out soon enough. But actually, we're going to let New York City find out, what they're just going to let the beatings continue until morale improves. Oh, Barbara Denby said she's from Coney Island. I went there once when I was a kid. I used to go to Palisades Park when I was a kid. I loved Palisades Park. Palisades Park was awesome. I've seen pictures of it since then, and it's less awesome than I remember it, but that's the great thing about being a kid. Let me just get an enlarged version of the YouTube comments so I can read them. Just 1 second. So I definitely have something to show you and something to talk about, and I think you guys are going to like this actually. Saw the Critical Drinker's review of Ironheart, which he said wasn't too impressive. Said it was the worst thing that Marvel has done ever, and it doesn't surprise me. Also said, made the point that Ironheart, the character, basically gets a free ride, at MIT, and then goes on to, steal the technology, maybe not the right correct example you want to be setting if you're trying to eliminate, stereotypes. But I just heard it was just unspeakably awful. It looks unspeakably awful. And the thing that Drinker mentioned that I thought was most accurate about it is that it's not only awful. They've been holding on for 3 years, trying to, hoping a nuclear war or something will interrupt the news cycle enough so they can just dump the thing. But it's not just that; it's just old and tired, and nobody's interested in it. It's just really appalling. It's just old, man. It's just old and tired. We'll see. But it does kind of play into very much play into what I want to talk about tonight. So let's see how the rooms are doing here. I always say it's 64 in YouTube, and yeah. So I might as well start the warm up on this. So I mentioned that I did an event at the Heritage Foundation, and that on the flight over, I was doing a thing for attorneys, and on the flight over, I was reading my friend Michael Walsh's book, The Devil's Pleasure Palace. And then I've read his follow-up to that called The Fiery Angel. And both of them are basically about the same thing. They're about Western art and Western music as being the anchor stone of our culture. And if you don't study Western art and Western music and you don't know what it is and you can't identify with it, you can't very well expect that culture to last very long. And the two motifs he covered mostly in Devil's Pleasure Palace were the fall of Lucifer from Paradise Lost, Milton, and also Faust, the bargain with the devil. And so I've been operating on this plane since then for 2.5, 3 weeks now. I've been thinking about our political situation, not even morally anymore. But I've been thinking about it metaphysically. I've been thinking about it metaphysically all the time. So I started thinking about things. Well, for example, the situation in New York where you've got an Islamic mayor. The U.S. has managed fairly well to resist the waves of Islamic immigration, but Paris is lost, is gone. I suspect that London is gone, and they don't seem to have any signs of. Forget about whether or not they're about to vote on it. There doesn't seem to be anything like the MAGA movement, or the Trump Make America Great Again movement's 10 years old now. And it took it didn't take a whole lot of time, really. Really started around 2015 when he announced it. Then he, was elected in 2016. But there doesn't seem to be that kind of a groundswell for that kind of save Britain before Britain's gone, save Paris before Paris is gone. It just doesn't seem to be happening. Now, McMahon in the YouTube comment section mentioned somebody who I was just about to talk about, named Curtis Sliwa. There's an option that Sliwa may run, I guess, as a Republican or something. But let me just say this: Curtis Sliwa and the Guardian Angels is kind of where I'm going with this whole meta picture. So here's the cards as I see them on the ground. The Islamic takeover of the West in Europe is largely accomplished. There are entire regions of Paris and London and Stockholm where you simply can't go, and there's been no pushback against this, because the Marxists have managed to convince us that to defend your own culture is evil and wrong, and in this case it's white supremacy, or it's you just pick your Islamophobic, transphobic, although those things are mutually exclusive, misogynist, horrible monster that you are, if you decide you want to defend your civilization. Donald Trump came roaring into office, especially the second time, with a promise to do that. And when I see ICE agents in Los Angeles rounding up illegal aliens, I never thought I would live to see that. I just never thought I'd live to see it. And all of the howling and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth, and you're going to split families up, which has been so pervasive that I feel it. I feel like, I don't know if this is right, because I've been disconnected from my culture and been inundated with this left-wing propaganda forever. And then along comes Homan and says, "Don't you realize that you're going to break up families?" And he just says, "Yeah, we sure are. You can either stay here if you're here legally, or you can go with your family." And there's not a moment's hesitation in him. There's not a moment's doubt. And when he says you're gonna break up families, and Homan says, "Hey, look, if I'm driving drunk and I get pulled over, the police are going to arrest me and they're going to break up my family. If I got kids in the car, they're going to take me to jail and they're going to send the kids home. That's what happens when you break the law. I thought, man, that kind of moral clarity is just amazing. So that combined with Mike Walsh's kind of astral plane argument about the West. I did my right angle last week was on Poland. I was in this headspace, and you know, in the siege of Vienna, where the Turks had damn near overrun Vienna, and if Vienna had fallen, then Rome would have fallen, and Islam would have basically done what they've been trying to do since there's been an Islam, and that is to take over all of Christendom. They took Jerusalem, and then they lost it to the Crusaders. Then they took it again. Constantinople fell, Eastern Church fell, and they wanted Rome. And in order to get Rome, they had to get the golden apple, which was Vienna. And Vienna held, and the relief column of Polish hussars, winged hussars. These are cavalrymen who had wings on their backs. 20,000 of them came charging down the hill and broke the siege, and that was the high water mark of Islam in history, if you don't count the infiltration that's going on now. But those Poles believed in Christianity, and so did the people in inside the city of Vienna, and they were ready to fight and die for it. And certainly there are Americans that are ready to fight and die for their civilization, and we all know what side they're on. They're on our side because no one can imagine Michael Moore or Stephen Colbert or any of these guys are, you know, grabbing a rifle and, you know, getting their one single life shot out of them in order to defend whatever it is they believe, which really isn't anything. It's just a negation of beliefs. So I've been thinking a lot about this spiritual, metaphysical aspect of this situation we find ourselves in, and I'm especially encouraged, not just by the fact that we won the 2024 election, but I've been really encouraged by the level of support that Trump is getting on things like, yeah, time to go home now. They've been here 20 years. Well, they've been here 20 years illegally. It's time to go now. Hey, Clay. And so P7 2017 says, I get why boys like Islam, but for the life of me, I cannot understand what Western women see in it. I'm really glad you said that, because it's a great segue into what I really want to be talking about before we get going tonight. Boys like Islam because Islam is strong, and they believe in Islam. They really believe in Islam, and they don't have mixed feelings about Islam, and they're not shy about telling you that they are here to conquer the rest of the world. The Dar al-Hassar, whatever, the house of war. They are here for that, and if you don't understand what Western women see in it, what Western women see in Islam is they see strong men. They see men that aren't afraid of being men, and men who believe in something and are ready to die for something. They see, the Democrats see this in them too. That's why they think they make good allies. Because the Islamists, for all of their manifest, the Dar al-Harb, thank you, for all of their manifest pathologies, they're not cowards. You know, they are, well, let me rephrase that. A lot of what they do is raw cowardice, beating up women, raping women in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. It's just raw cowardice. I don't find them to be men at all, but they believe in what they believe in, and they're ready to fight for it. And they don't have that internal contradiction, and they don't have that kind of Hamlet sort of, well, I don't know, maybe we should just let it see what happens, or maybe we should just sit back and wait and call the cops. I see people shoplifting, you know, in these videos, and I just say, I just don't think I could do it. Not the shoplifting, I know I couldn't do that. I just don't think I could stand there and watch people steal from a store without getting involved. You know, I just don't think I could just watch somebody just walk out of a store without saying something. And that's what used to hold civilization together. So I've been thinking a lot about this and what can be done to restore our connection to our Western culture and to make palpable and attractive the heroic image of the West. Because one of the things Michael talks about that the Western tradition is always been heroic, and heroic to the degree where you're you're not so much fighting against God as you are free to argue against God. That the nature of a Judeo-Christian religion is that you've been given free will. You're not an automaton. That you don't need a virtue squad whacking people with sticks because they're holding hands and stuff. It's just all internal. And so all of this stuff is important. And as religion gets further and further away from our lives, it disconnects us from the philosophy that built the West, and the imagery, more than anything, the imagery of the West is, you just don't see it anymore. I mean, you could have a hero like James Bond. Next James Bond apparently is going to be black, and I get the feeling I know how that's going to do at the box office, because I wonder if the people who have no problem making James Bond black, I wonder if those people, how they would feel if you said, well, what if we made James Bond an American this time? You can't make James Bond American. James Bond is British. That's the entire essence of James Bond. Oh, so there is an essence there, is there? So there's that. And then Coffee Aficionado talked about the power of the light side. And when I was talking with the attorneys, I said, that the great advantage that we have, the great flaming sword that we have, is truth. The truth is external and real, and that it is a flaming sword of a weapon, the truth, but we don't use it because we're uncomfortable with it. So in any event, all of these things are swirling through my head. And then the final thing that's got swirling through my head was this. I've been giving Gen Z a real hard time for a lot of years. And then when I was deep into that cycle of civilizations thing, which I still think is certainly active, came to the realization that the next heroes of the next cycle are going to be Gen Z. I thought, these guys can't, these guys are afraid to, they're afraid to stub their toes. They're not going to go ashore on Iwo Jima's. No, it's unimaginable that they would have that kind of physical courage. And then I realized that's true, but this crisis is not it's not a physical crisis. No one's really talking about picking up a rifle. All these people hysterical about bombing Iran. Oh, we're going to have to go to war with Iran. It's like, nobody's going to have to pick up a rifle. We're not going to start a draft. It's not going to be that kind of war. It's not going to be a nuclear war. It's a war of ideas. It's a war of philosophy and morality and metaphysics and all that other stuff. And that's when I started thinking about Gen Z very seriously. First of all, as I've said and learned to say anyway, they're not responsible for how they were raised, but I do find it absolutely astonishing, and very hopeful that the largest demographic, the most pro-Trump demographic, was the youngest demographic. That is the best possible news out of the 2024 election, and the worst possible news for the Democrats. And as I've said many times before, that happened without us going after them. We never made a play for them. We never, yes, I'm going to make you proud to be Gen Z for once, Clay. We never made a play for them. We never went after them. We never told them what our story was. It's just the left chased them away. They just got tired with the busybodies, and they just chased them away. So there's that, and there's also a lot of indications that Gen Z is also turning into a more religious generation than we've seen in quite a long time, and that for the first time ever, men are young men are Gen Z men are more religious than women are, which has never been true. And women have always been more religious than the men. So I see this kind of vast, untapped potential. And then we come back to the analogy, rather the historical example is a better word, of Curtis Sliwa and the Guardian Angels. So let me just talk about that, then I want to show you something. So for those of you who haven't heard the story, I've told it here many, many times. In the 1970s, late 70s, the New York subway system New York was just a hellhole. It had the #1 murder rate in the country. Once Giuliani was finished with it, it wasn't even in the top 20. But in the 70s, you would go into the subway with $20 in your front pocket to hand to the muggers so that they didn't kill you. It was just a toll. It was just a crime tax that you would pay. And these little old ladies are getting beaten up and mugged and pushed around, and it was just absolutely lawless, covered with graffiti on the inside. They'll see this again under their new mayor, no doubt. But in any event, Curtis Sliwa, who should be on our money, was a guy, I think it was just a McDonald's manager. He just got tired of it. And so he basically found out where most of these guys were hanging out and went to their lair, walked into their territory and basically confronted them and said, this is a chicken shit thing to be doing, for your young men, you're beating up on old ladies and stealing their money. You're made for better stuff than that, You're made to be guardians and protectors. So basically he went and became a father to all there fatherless boys who just had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Sliwa had the genius to understand that these kids were joining gangs because the gangs gave them a sense of purpose and community and leadership and somebody to look up to. And so Sliwa basically said to them, you should be protecting these people, and I'm going to start an organization, and I want you to join. The critical thing about what Sliwa did was Sliwa didn't go looking for good kids to patrol the subways. He went to the people that were doing the actual mugging and talked to them. And he convinced them that they should be protectors. So he started this organization called the Guardian Angels. And after the amazement wore off that this guy had just walked in there, these young, kids, these thugs are basically saying, well, what do we get out of this? And Sliwa says, you get a t-shirt and you get a red beret. And that's apparently all it took. Apparently that's all it took. It took a t-shirt and a red beret, because he quickly recruited an army of these former thugs and taught them respect, and they would, when a train would come into the station, they'd stand two on each side of every door. They'd stand at attention with their arms behind their back with their red berets, and they made sure that nobody got hurt. And it just caught like wildfire. And all of a sudden, the subways were safe. And these little old ladies who used to look at these guys with absolute fear and terror and hatred would come up and thank them. And these young men rose to the occasion because young men want to rise to the occasion, because they need it. There's an inborn desire for them to be heroes. And if they can't be heroes, then they'll be villains. If there's no outlet for heroism for young men, and no fathers to teach them how to be heroic young men, then they'll just turn to drugs and violence because they hate themselves, and they hate themselves because they know they're made for something better. They'll ride that train all the way to hell. They'll take everybody else with them. So all of these things together swirling around my head, and I just thought, what if we were to just try something different? Something really different. Young men are playing heroes in video games. That's the good news. Master Chief has been a father figure for a lot of guys. You look at the Warhammer 40K universe, and you see a lot of heroic figures. There's also the dark side there, but you got guys like Robert Gilliman, and you got Rogel Dorn, but especially you've got Sanguinius in Warhammer 40k, who's essentially an angel, a modern angel. So putting all these things together that have been floating in my head, the kind of rising conservatism of young men who have no role models, the example of the guardian angels, the increasing desire for religion among young people, the increasing conservatism in the way they vote, and so on. So that got me thinking: what if we were to talk to Gen Z men differently, completely differently, like completely differently? James Motif says Gordon Freeman was my hero. What if we were to speak about them in an entirely different light? Which brings me back to the iconic figure in Western mythology and theology, who I admire. Clay beat me to it. Clay says Sanguinius is Saint Michael battling the devil. Yes, I want to talk about Saint Michael. So in Western literature, as a result of Paradise Lost from Milton, but also in the Bible, Satan rebels against God. He's the second most powerful angel. He takes a third of all of the angels and leads them in rebellion against God. And there's a war in heaven, which God wins, not surprisingly. But the individual who defeats Satan is Saint Michael, Archangel Michael, and Archangel Michael defeats Satan in combat, casts him out of heaven. Satan goes down into this lake of fire, where Michael essentially keeps his boot on his neck. So there's a passage. I don't remember if the passage was in the Bible or whether it was in Paradise Lost, but basically there's a passage that says Satan couldn't even move his head because Michael had so restrained him. Michael, the angel with the sword of fire, who also guarded the entrance of Eden, so that Adam and Eve couldn't return. We're not, as Michael Walsh points out, Adam and Eve aren't going back to Eden now. They're trying to get to heaven, not Eden. And so I thought, what if we were to appeal to young Gen Z men and treat them as if they were the Archangel Michael, instead of slackers, layabouts, losers, cowards, weenies, wimps, and all the other things that get called all the time? What if we were to just completely turn that picture around, and instead of sneering at them and talking about how weak they are and how dumb they are and how gutless they are, and what if we were to just completely invert that script and start referring to young men as I said to those attorneys. I said, you're not attorneys. That's what you are. That's not who you are. Who you are fiery angels holding a flaming sword. You're sent by God himself down to earth to bring justice to an unjust world. That's why you're lawyers. That's why you're given the calling that you've been given. And so I started thinking along those lines, and I put together. Since I have a movie studio now, my own little movie studio, I put together a 2-minute piece, just nothing but imagery. And my question is, see, I'm not so much trying to sell this idea as I'm testing it. I'm curious to know what you think. I know a lot of people watch that's recorded, but we've got a bunch of people live. We probably got 150 people watching live in the comment sections, I guess, combined of the two things. So what I've done is I've gone and put together about a 2-minute, it's just a set of images. It's not even a story. It's just imagery. But my question is, what if we were to What if we were to flip the script and start referring to Gen Z males as potential archangels, that they have a strong sense of right and wrong, strong sense of justice, a strong anti-authoritarian. What if conservatives were to go after them the same way that Sliwa went after the thugs in the subway? And what if we were to go after them and basically say to them, you are fiery angels, and your job, your destiny, because of the wheel of history, your destiny is to save Western civilization from itself by the flaming sword of truth and by banishing injustice. You are on the side of righteousness, and you are on the side of good, and your job is to fight evil. I think they'd buy it. So this isn't, what I'm about to show you isn't a story. It's just it's not a story, it's not a trailer. It's just a thought experiment. But what if we were to look at Gen Z this way? Okay, Tom, it's 2 minutes long. Tell me what you think. I'm gonna turn off the mics. I'm gonna turn down the volume, and then I'm gonna listen to it, and then I'll come back. It might loop a little bit on YouTube as it always does. But what if we were to go after Gen Z like this?
And I swore an open
Just a thought. I don't know. I was struck by that. I'm looking here. Creepy and overblown. Okay, well, that's not what I was aiming for. Well, getting a lot of negative feedback on this, so that's why you show these kind of things. Um, hmm, that's disappointing. Um, but sometimes I run off on my own, and and sometimes I get ahead of myself. So I guess we'll put that aside here. Um, just reading the comments here. Yeah, all right, I'll put it aside. Um, all right, well, we'll get to the questions, see what people have to say about other stuff. Um, when I told the interns at uh, Heritage that they were fiery angels here to uh, bring justice to an unjust world, they lit up. So, all right, let's have a look at the form. Uh, 625. Thanks for curating this, Marisha. Got a Marisha Dark. These questions are so long. I mean, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. Road Rider, Road Runner, 3 Bob Neeps, Eric Blake, second Eric Blake. Get through these as quick as we can. Okay, so topic: A Tale of Two Broken Windows. I'm going to attempt to draw a connection between two popular concepts with a similar name. Would like to hear what you think. First is the so-called broken windows fallacy, which is the Keynesian idea that destruction is good for the economy. The classic case being that if we smash a window, it creates a job for window repairmen and glass producers. By this logic, we should encourage more destruction to create more jobs, but it's a fallacy because it wastes resources repairing what didn't need to be repaired and which could have gone elsewhere. Yes. If it turns out that you do nothing but smash windows, you don't get to build any new windows. Second is the so-called broken windows policy, most famously championed by Rudy Giuliani, which states that it's important to police even seemingly petty crimes to prevent incentivizing greater crimes. The classic case being if a person smashes a window or even sees a broken window, they realize crime is tolerated here and use it as a signal that they can get away with far worse because no one seems to care. In places like LA, politicians abandon the broken windows policy when they permit theft, looting, vandalism, etc. My claim is that they do this in part because they're warped minds and they embrace the broken windows fallacy and don't see the second and third consequences of it. They think they can avoid mass exodus and create economic booms in spite of because of all the damage, that essentially it's no big deal. In fact, it's a good thing happening. Look at all the job opportunities we're creating. No wonder people want to come here. Of course, we know in reality the broken windows fallacy fails to account for the actual human incentives, and Giuliani proved the broken window policy worked in New York. Thoughts? Well, I don't know what the question is. Um, uh, let me just read it again here. if you're saying that the broken windows policy, if you're saying that rioters are rioting because they think they're providing economic opportunities for glaziers or whatever, that I don't think I get. Look, they don't break windows because of the broken windows policy or because of the broken windows fallacy. They break windows because they like to break windows. They break windows because they like throwing rocks at things and they like seeing things smashed. It's destructive without any, there's no philosophy behind it, there's no morality behind it. They just plain like to break things. It's fun. They don't, when they take over an intersection and start, drifting cars, they're not concerned about, they're not even concerned about their own cars. They're just concerned about the adrenaline rush. So the political class encourages their lawlessness because the political class needs lawlessness. The political class isn't doing that so they can start repairing windows. They don't repair those windows. The political class does it because the goal is to drive the middle class out of American cities. That's it, they're not embracing, the politicians are not embracing the broken windows fallacy. To think that the politicians are allowing this destruction so they can begin new construction or repairs is insane. They're allowing the destruction because they need to drive out people who don't tolerate destruction. They want to be left with the small aristocracy, which is them, and then a large group of poor people who are dependent on them. They're intentionally making life unlivable. This is what they've been doing for decades now. They are intentionally driving away the people who vote Republican, which are middle class. It's not so they personally do the building, it's so they get the laurels of a booming economy. That destroying a city is not booming economy. Los Angeles is losing people, and California is losing people in droves. They don't care. There's nothing positive about this. There's no hidden motive, there's no secret, and not even a misconception. They want to stay elected forever because they get the perks of being in office. They get six-figure salaries, they get six-figure retirement funds, they get all of these cars and special trips and all the rest of it. There's no secret motive. They're just plain in cahoots with street criminals. Street criminals like the fact that they get to smash windows and go in and take $400 tennis shoes, and the ruling class says, great, that means that the businesses will leave and the other people will leave. And then, and Roadrunner says they have their own security forces. Zohan and AOC genuinely believe their destructive policies lead to prosperity. No, they don't. No, they don't. They do not believe it leads to prosperity. They believe it leads to political power. And there's a huge difference between those two. They believe it leads to political power. They encourage the lawless and the brutal because that's their street muscle. AOC is a bartender. She couldn't be anything other than a bartender in the free market. She's just a dim-witted mouthpiece. And the same for the rest of these. They're not here to build anything, and they're not here to they're not here for anybody other than themselves. They have figured out that the way to stay elected as a Democrat, as a progressive, is you can't build anything. They don't believe in the free market. They don't believe in work. So what they'll do is they will encourage the people who have already got grievances, and they will then say to them, look, see what happens? This is all white supremacy and all the rest, until they make life so unlivable that the middle class moves out and they've got nothing left but faithful, poor, entitled, dependent slaves, basically. There's nothing in there. They have no intentions. They don't have good intentions. This is a gigantic mistake. They're not dumb but evil. They're evil. They're evil. They're evil people. They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. I fought this for 10 years trying to figure out what possible motivation they have. And then I heard, I don't know who it was. It was Sean Hannity, maybe. So no, the reason that the mayor went to the funeral of a person who murdered somebody is because they're on the sides of destruction in order to force out the middle class. It's just, there's no other explanation for it. They're not good-natured idiots. They're just swine. And if they were good-natured idiots, they would be making the case, but they don't. They don't make the case that this is for prosperity. They don't ever make the case. All they do is complain about injustice, but they don't talk about how our system is going to produce more wealth, or we're going to produce better neighborhoods. No. If they wanted to produce better neighborhoods, they could do it with a snap of a finger. Gavin Newsom had that done when his lord and master Xi Jinping came to visit. And all of a sudden, all the homeless people in San Francisco disappeared, and they put plastic things over all of the garbage, and they just basically just tidied up the city, and it was beautiful for 3 days, and then he left, and that was the end of it. Gone. Goodbye. There's no other explanation. They know what they're doing, and they know how to fix it. They just don't, because it doesn't suit their political agenda. They're nihilists. The only thing they believe in is destruction. And Marusha's trying to split hairs with the difference between neolibs and progressives. It doesn't matter to me. These are the people that create destruction, and they're the people that vote for destruction. They are filled with envy, and if they can't have everything, then they'll burn it down. And there's no logic behind it, and there's no virtue behind it. They're not just wrong. They're evil. They know what they're doing. And the fact that they can stop doing it for a weekend means they know what they're doing. So they did it. So there you go. Capital G Geek. Greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. I heard the term Untranny Valley for the first time last week. I'm sure you can figure out the meaning. Society's breaking down. It's not a nice place to be. I can't even buy underwear in the local store because it's in a locked compartment. That's right. They're not wrong, they're evil, is what they say about all of us, says Marusha. Well, the difference, Marusha, is when I say they're evil, I'm right. And when they say that we're evil, they're wrong. And it's not a nuanced thing, and it's not a question of perspective. It's an objectively true statement. They're evil. And this is exactly what I was talking about a few minutes ago. This idea that, oh, no, it's more or less the same thing. We're just a little less evil than they are. They're a little more stupid than we are. No. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They are in it for themselves at the cost of everything else, and they don't care how many people die or what burns down. They're just plain evil. And if you don't believe in good and evil, you haven't been paying attention. It's not a question of, oh, geez, there's a different way of looking at it. No. People are being murdered, and people are being raped, and people are having their businesses ruined and their lives ruined and so on, and that's just evil. And the inverse is true as well. New York City was run by evil people forever until Rudy Giuliani came along, and then New York City got to be a really pleasant place to live for 10 years. Now it's going to go right straight back to hell again. And that's because the people who vote for this are evil. The rich liberals who vote for this know, at least they used to know, that it's not going to affect their lives. There's no other word for it. When your entire policy is to cause harm, intentionally cause harm for your benefit, that's the definition of it. Back to capital G. Society is breaking down. It's not a nice place to be. I can't even buy underwear in the local store because it's in a locked compartment. It's in a locked compartment because of the shoplifting, and because the shoplifting is allowed because the police are not allowed to enforce the law. If somebody calls and says somebody's stealing something from our store, they're told to just forget about it. And so, yes, it's evil. Now everybody has now you have to take a token to the cash register to get a bag of nachos because the nachos are locked up behind plastic. Because of shoplifting, because the shoplifting is tolerated, because the law enforcement isn't being allowed to enforce the law. They're told by the city fathers, well, the city trans fathers, no, don't enforce the law. This is what Soros did with all of these district attorneys. We're not going to enforce the laws against shoplifting. Okay, then you're going to get shoplifting, and it's going to end up being inconvenient. Then it's going to end up gone, and that's exactly what's happening. There are no Starbucks in Oakland. There are no any of those things in Oakland. It's just plain wasteland, from the top down, done again, and not just from the top down. It's from the bottom up because people keep voting for it. So there it is. Back to capital G geek. Societal norms must be enforced in order to persist. The current legal system isn't doing it. Your experience with the assault in the restaurant from the last show is part of this. I disagree with your take on it, since there are tons of mentally ill people that are just ignored by the police. Perhaps a good punch would provide more motivation to behave in a socially acceptable way than a ride downtown and immediate release. Yeah, well, the problem now is who's going to do the punching? Here's a very minor example of someone who would probably benefit from a serious but non-fatal beating. Hang on. Guy on a subway. It's loading. Yeah, and the reason that other people don't get involved is not just because they're afraid, because most of them are not so much afraid. What they're afraid of is they're afraid if they get involved, the law is going to come down on the side of the criminal. That's what they're afraid of. If they thought that the law was going to back them up, then they would take some action. Yeah, that guy's looking to get her. That guy's looking to get knocked down. Okay. Well, the reason this guy's just acting out on the subway, doing all kinds of sexual things to passengers, the reason he's doing it is because he knows the police won't get there in time. And the reason it didn't used to happen was because it wasn't a question of whether the police would get there in time. Guys on the train would take care of this problem back when there were men on the train. And again, I'm not saying I'd get involved now, because if I did get involved, then how do I know that I'm not going to get arrested and this guy's going to sue me? That's the kind of inverted world we live in. It's got nothing to do with when society and the coercive power on the state is on the side of criminals, then you not only lose law enforcement, but you also lose civic enforcement from citizens. They won't do anything. They'll be punished for it. Which is why I say, hey, you know what, New York? Go for it. Go for it. Have your Islamic socialist mayor. Fantastic. Make these state-run grocery stores and all of that stuff. Turn it into a living hellhole. You announce who you are. People vote for you. They get what they deserve. They get the government they deserve. The United States got the government it deserved in 2024, and the toxicity of the cities is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, yeah, they just need to be reminded. And when things get bad enough, they may or may not change. I don't know. Only 5% of the city actually voted for this guy. Well, he's leading, buck of five, right? I mean, he's leading he won the Democratic primary, which usually means he's won the election. So if 95% of the city is so apathetic about their future and they don't care, then they're going to get what they deserve. I saw some young progressive who went to New York said, yeah, I really like the guy. I think he really cares about people. Okay, you're going to get the education you want. You're going to get what the women in Paris get, and what the women in London get, and what the women in Stockholm get. You're going to get what you voted for. And you're going to keep getting what you voted for until you change the way you vote. I'm just staying the hell out of those places, you know. If this problems in LA were close to me, I would have been out here a long time ago. I live in a little area of America that's been plunked down in LA County. It's a long way from pretty much all the trouble, and if the trouble gets close to my house, I'm gone. But right now, I'm just fine. It's a big city in terms of area. It's just a huge, huge, huge city. You know, we had a couple of burglaries in our neighborhood. We put posters up all over the place, and And since then, I mean, when I say a couple, I think we had two. And haven't had that problem since then. We watch out for each other there. So there you go. Yeah, you're right. Capital G. It's coming apart, and there is no one to blame but the people who are voting for him. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be an upset. Maybe something will happen in the primary. I mean in the general election. I doubt it. They could have had Curtis Sliwa. They didn't. They voted for this current Marxist. So keep going. Keep going, liberals. Those $1 billion high rises, with the $100 million apartments up on the 70th floor. You're never gonna be able to leave those apartments. You're gonna be stuck in there. We're gonna be like prisoners in there. And okay, if Sliwa wins, then there's hope for New York City in the same way there's hope for America. If not, there's still hope for New York City. It's gonna take a lot more abuse. So there you go. But they are going to get what they deserve, as do we all. Road Rider. Hi, Bill. Hi, Road Rider. Wow, great questions tonight. Political question regarding the trade-off Elon made to spend more time campaigning and doging than attending to his companies. Do you feel SpaceX is still SpaceX even though Elon was checked out for 5 months? Was his absence a possible cause to the Starship problems, including that recent Big Bang at Massey's test site? No new Neuralink info. The boring company is silent too. Tesla has robotaxis in Austin, and the little good news: no one's setting Teslas on fire anymore, supposedly. Is Elon Musk more important to SpaceX, Neuralink, boring Tesla than just a figurehead? I was hoping that he wouldn't be. I was hoping that those companies would do fine without him, but they all seem to be in some trouble. The last 3 SpaceX Starship flights were not just failures, but they were the identical failure. Booster performed perfectly, but the version 2 of the Starship upper stage, hey Quibo, I'm doing fine, thanks, failed 3 times in a row. Exploded twice, and then the third time it lost control in orbit. And now part of that is they were just so crazy spectacular, and their successes were just being racked up. So but they've clearly got a problem. I haven't ruled. I don't know anybody who knows more about. I mean, everybody knows more about this than I do, but I am a little concerned about sabotage on the explosion of the third Starship. But I suspect what probably happened is they're just trying to iterate version 3. Trinity Waters says all 3 V2 Starships failed for unrelated reasons. Well, the V1s didn't fail. Those things. Remember the first test flights? They caught the booster, and the V1s were. The first reentry was uncontrolled, but the second and third, and I don't know, maybe even fourth were they just powered down right into the ocean. So I don't know whether they're trying to move too fast, whether they're iterating the Starship too quickly. I suspect that's not it. And it's better to blow one up on the test stand at Massey's than to have it blow up in the air again. Chris Meyer says the failures were not the same failure. So look, I don't criticize people for failing. I've said from the beginning, there are bugs in the machine, ghosts in the machine, and you don't know what they are until they show their head. So as long as they not making the same mistake twice, as long as they're new failures, then they're learning stuff. I'd like to see them pick up the operational tempo. But clearly, Elon being out of these companies had some kind of an effect on their pace. So it seems to me anyway that we're supposed to be doing, at the beginning of 2025 they were talking about 2 Starship launches a month, and they're not coming in anything close to that. So I say just keep making mistakes, and and just don't make the same mistake twice. Go out and make new mistakes. But there seems to be maybe some kind of a systemic bug that's creeped into SpaceX where, what is it now? So 4 failures of the Starship, 3 on board the booster plus the explosion at Massey's. That's, you know, I don't know if they're using the Raptor 3s. If they are, I'd feel better because the Raptor 3 is amazing and it takes a while to work the bugs out of that. But I just would like to see more launches, you know. I'd really like to see more launches. Yeah, Eric says they got the first stage down pat. Yeah, the catching the booster, which seemed to everybody to be the part that was just impossible to even conceive of. Turns out, yeah, that's pretty much easy. So, you know, I think we did a right angle yesterday, yesterday, no, 2 days ago, on Elon's stint at Doge and so on, and whether or not, you know, it has really affected things. But I'm sure they'll get back on track. I just want them. I would just like to see the pace faster. You know, I'd just like to see. Okay, let's just do it again. So it seems like their operational tempo has fallen off. Although it fell off before the election. Actually, it was that delay. I forget what the flight tests were, but they held them on the ground for 6 months or something. It's like, get in the air, man. Get in the air. That's what I would recommend. So, yeah, he's not afraid of failing. I'm not afraid of failing either. I just like him to fail faster. So we'll see. Roadrunner, greetings, friend Bill. Hey, Roadrunner. It's time to start building a wall and moat around New York City. I'm sure Snake Plissken would approve. Every time I think even New York City can't be that stupid, they turn around and say, hold my Cabernet Sauvignon. Yes, I think we pretty much covered that. Yeah, he's talking about, he's linked to something to Iowa Hawk, and it's the downward spiral. It's linear solutions leads to crummier times, which leads to more smart people leaving, which leads to dumber constituents, which elect crazier politicians, which produce linear solutions, which lead to crummier times, and so on, and down and down and down it goes. Yeah. So, you know, either the cities are going to be abandoned, or people are going to wake up and start doing things differently. And I don't know which one of those it's going to be. But it's going to be one of them. So, yeah, so we obviously covered a lot of that already, Roadrunner, so hope that'll do it. Bob Neef, what are the roots of the Americans' left self-loathing that leads to hatred of America? It's brain wiring is a lot of it. There's a term called oikophobia, which is the opposite of xenophobia. Oikophobia is a fear of the familiar. I think the psychological underpinnings are, these are people who have decided that they want to sound smart, and you can't sound smart if they believe that you can't sound smart if you believe what all the normies believe. So in order to sound smart, they'll take a contrary position on everything. And that's just stupid. The reason that conservatives are conservative is because of common sense. We're not against change. We just think that new things have to be proven, and things that are new are not automatically good. The left thinks that because they are so dissatisfied with their positions in life. The reason that the left hates America is because it hates itself. They hate who they are, and they hate their station in life. I saw some guy losing his mind, just completely crashing out in his car on a Facebook video or something, where he's screaming and yelling about how he has to go to work and do this crummy job that he absolutely hates just to make enough money to stay alive in this stupid capitalist system, and America's the worst place ever, and he wants to go live someplace else. And I say, go, man, go. You know, go live someplace else. Really, really go live someplace else. There was a video that got kind of some play not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, about this African woman who moved, who had a business or a small business or two here in America, and she picked up and moved to Africa, went back to the homeland to get away from all the racism, and she basically said, "I'll take the racism. Nothing works here. You can't get water here. You can't get food here. You can't get snacks here. There are snakes in your bedroom. There are scorpions in your under your pillow. Everything is corrupt. Nothing ever happens. You can complain about this, or you can't get anything repaired." It went on and on and on and on and on about all the things in Africa that are horrible. And she said, "I want to go back to America. I want to go back to America right now." Yeah, that woman moved to Nigeria, and 2 months later she loathed it. So I think you should just I think we should help them go live somewhere else. I think we should help them go live in the country of their choice, and I don't think we should let them back. I really don't think we should let them back. I think it should be. I think it'd be an investment in our future for the government to pay for people who really want to leave America enough to leave. Yeah, I did, Quibo, thank you. I really think it'd be a wise investment for the government to pay for them to pay for their airfare and even give them $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever. Here you go. You can. We will pack you up, and we will ship you there. $5,000 goes a long way in whatever country you're moving to. Yeah, just like Marisha says, to anyone who hates America, I support my tax dollars paying for a one-way ticket to the country of your choosing. And then you sign an agreement, a contract. You void your U.S. citizenship, and you are not allowed back, not even on a tourist visa. You hate it here so much, go. That's the justice that I want for the left. I don't want them killed. I don't want them hurt. I just want them to go live in some of their communist paradises. Just go. One thing I remember about a Vice, before Vice got really awful, back when it was a little interesting, before they got all this money, they did like a 3 or 4 parter on North Korea. And he said even at the special restaurant that they stopped at on this 4-hour bus ride to see a dam, right? They had taken these American visitors on a 4-hour bus ride to see some hydroelectric dam. Like oh wow, amazing, huh? A dam, amazing. But on the way back, they said, oh, maybe we'll just stop at the next place we happen to come to. So they stop at this restaurant, and there were 13 people in the bus, let's say. And the restaurant was open, and it turned out there were 13 places set at the tables, not an extra place. It was just so obviously set up. And he said, we sat there and we had lunch, and he said, I couldn't tell you what it was that we ate. It was just some form of matter. I just never forgot that line. It's like, yeah, matter. You're eating, it's obviously matter. There's no other way to identify it. Yeah. So they hate themselves and they hate the country, and they're constantly bitter why they don't do better, but they don't want to work. So when you combine laziness and envy and a desire to appear smarter than you are, you've got most of the ingredients for a modern leftist. You throw in some maliciousness and some violent tendencies, plus a whole lot of neuroses, and you pretty much got the entire formula there. Another one from Bob Neef. Please tell us about meeting Rush Limbaugh. I don't want to be mistaken for this. It was a little bit disappointing, and only for one reason. When I met Rush, it was pretty near the end of his life, and the reason it was just a little bit disappointing was because he was stone cold deaf at the time. Just couldn't hear. And so he autographed a book and said, keep up the great work. And obviously I just really, worship the guy, and he's a giant who stands alone. There's nobody has ever taken his place, and nobody ever will. But there wasn't really a chance to talk to him because he was just smiling and shaking hands and stuff, because he just couldn't hear a thing. He was completely deaf. And that's one of the things I admired about him too. Was the way he handled that, and the way he, didn't make just didn't make a big deal out of it. He was just a very, very nice guy, and I wish I could have had a little bit to talk about him, but to talk with him rather, but I really just didn't. So, unfortunately, again, I don't want to say it was disappointing. It wasn't that Rush was disappointing. It was just disappointing that I didn't get a chance to have a whole lot of chance to talk to him, just because he was really not able to talk to pretty much anybody at that point, I think. And another one from Bob Neef. In the interest of future America, should Clarence Thomas retire from the Supreme Court so that Trump can choose a conservative replacement? No, I think Clarence Thomas needs to stay on. I think he's invaluable. I think Thomas is a legal genius and a great patriot and really understands the Constitution. I think Thomas should stay on as long as he possibly can, and hope we can flip another one of the seats. Now the three women that were appointed by Obama and Biden are all relatively young for justices, but we really pretty much have a 6-9 court right now, which is a little bit of a margin. I don't want to see Clarence Thomas go until Clarence Thomas is no longer able to function, and I suspect that if Thomas ever gets if Clarence Thomas ever gets the feeling that he's really losing his edge, I think he would resign, because he's a man of integrity. But no, I don't think he should retire, because you don't know what you're going to get, and he's just rock solid, and I'd like to see him stay there, forever. Quibo says he's old and wants to retire soon. Well, it's up to him if he wants to. If he wants to have, I don't want to force him to stay, but I would encourage him to stay for as long as he's able, because Clarence is he's a national treasure. Eric Blake, tonight of the case of the Yogi principle. So, Bill, as I was going to post this anyway, but the premise of Roadrunner's question and what you've said at the beginning of this stream actually leads right into mine, so all the better. One of the most irritating trends I've seen this week among conservative pundits is how they've been reporting on the Democratic primary for the New York mayor race as if it's the actual election. Needless to say, it is not. The queer Muslim Kami has not been elected mayor yet, and as such, there's no need to panic. As Rush would say, I will tell you when it's time to panic. In this case, as you may or may not be aware, Cuomo, who just lost to the queer Muslim Kami, has already registered to run third party, plus Mayor Adams is running as an independent, and as a few pundits have bothered to remember, there is in fact a Republican in the running, none other than Curtis Sliwa, giving it another shot. In other words, Bill, the Democrat vote in the general election is said to be potentially split three ways. Maybe Adams could be convinced to make an alliance with Sliwa, RFK Jr. style. Regardless, as Yogi would say, it ain't over till it's over, unless we forget Yogi's smarter than the average bear. Okay. That'd be great if it happens. And then last one is Eric Blake saying, P.S. Britain does have a MAGA movement, the Reform Party led by Nigel Farage, and it's constantly been gaining seats in Parliament, again, as Yogi said. Yeah. It's gaining seats, but it's not... I mean, look, Nigel Farage got Britain out of the EU, and that was... a real achievement. No, it took them, 7 years after they first voted before they let them vote again, and they still voted wrong. So there's that. I've met him briefly, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago or something. But it doesn't have the Reform Party doesn't seem to have the oomph that MAGA has. I agree that they're similar in terms of messaging, but Donald Trump won the presidency first time he ran, and and I just don't see it really on the ground. You know, I just don't. I don't. I just. I don't know. It just seems to me that the immigration situation has gotten so out of balance there. It's hard to imagine that unarmed policemen would be able to enforce immigration deportations in England. I mean that scandal where they were trafficking, was it thousands of young white girls, and nobody wanted to say anything about it because there were 50 Muslims or whatever it was, and you know, that kind of thing is really really worrisome. I don't see it in France, and I don't see it really in Germany. Poland and Hungary and a bunch of Eastern European nations have had the strength of will to basically say, no, we're not doing this. If America were to vanish from the earth, and be the only condition I would leave America, but if it were to vanish from the earth, I would put Poland very, very high on that list, despite the fact that it borders with Russia. I just admire the Poles very much, and I admire Argentina. So, you know, it can happen. I do think that the whole internationalist, you know, New World Order liberal idea that everybody is going to be a progressive left-wing liberal in the world, that idea is way past its sell date, and that historical forces are against them. But I don't know. I don't know. Things are very bad in Britain, and I don't know if it's whether it's too late to save that country or not. I guess what I don't see in Britain is I don't see a whole lot of people, you know, doing the American equivalent would be, you know, putting a big American flag on your truck and you know, on these billboards and stuff. There's just very little. Seems like there's just very little street support. Yeah, Warsaw is a tremendous city, and people walk in the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning without any worries whatsoever. So, you know, America had enough back in November, and we'll see. Eric says, ironically, it might be up to King William to take charge and clean up. And P7 2017 says, can Britain be saved with how many people they've imported? Can this be turned around? This is my concern, is that they've imported so many people. London is so Muslim now, and so is Paris. I just cannot imagine. I just don't even know if they have the manpower, let alone, the manpower is not the problem. The willpower is the problem. But I don't think they've got the manpower to do what they need to do there, and so on. So, you know, we'll see. But it's not encouraging. However, I think the example of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement is encouraging for nationalists around the world who basically saw what was happening in America, and we managed to not only stop that train heading off the rails, but we actually have managed to stop it and reverse it. So Britain's going to need to recover its sense of identity and who it is, and who they are, and the British Church of England is just, you know, is just pathetic. It's just, you know, the Archbishop of Canterbury is, you know, they're weren't they the ones who said, oh, we've got to put little rooms for Muslims in our churches so that if they come and visit, they can be comfortable without having to see a cross and stuff. It's like, oh, okay. So, yeah, I don't think King Charles is going to last a super long time. And I feel sorry for Charles. he's, I mean, he was just completely emotionally neglected and really just abused as a kid. But he's batty. I mean, Charles is really just kind of nutty. I get the feeling that King William, on the other hand, is an extremely level-headed guy. I like what I've seen of Prince William very much. He really seems to be a level-headed guy who has his mother's sense of connection to the population, and seems to be, well, he's the oldest son. I mean, Charles was two, but Charles was just I almost said he was a weak man, but he was just a ruined man. And that's not his fault. The whole system was crazy about that. What was I going to say about Charles and William? I saw the list of the 100 greatest Britons, and Winston Churchill was first, and second was what's the name of that engineer? Brunel Kingdom, the great engineer. But third was Princess Diana. Third greatest Briton ever was Princess Diana, and I just laughed out loud. She came in ahead of Shakespeare. She came in ahead of Newton. It's really, I don't know where Queen Elizabeth II was. It came in ahead of Watt, came in ahead of all the great scientists, came in ahead of Isaac Newton, came in ahead of Shakespeare. I think Shakespeare was fifth, and Diana was third. So, you got that. That's like saying, giving you the list of the top 100 Americans, and and your third choice is Taylor Swift. It's like, really? Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I'm glad Churchill came in first, and was it Brunel? Was that his name? Kingdom. The engineer who built these great bridges and built the gigantic steamships and so on. I think he's probably top 5. I don't think he's second, and Diana's certainly not third. Diana was, I don't know. My mom is a British subject, and my mom couldn't stand Diana. Just couldn't stand her. Henry V. Yeah, Henry V was like 30th or something. Or 50th or something like that. Yeah, Elton John is ahead of Henry V. That's just, just nuts. I would have put Henry V in the top 5. Isambard, thanks. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, that's the one. Yeah, he was an amazing guy, but he wasn't more amazing than Isaac Newton, and he wasn't more amazing than Winston Churchill. I would have put, Shakespeare. I would have put Shakespeare first, Newton second, and a closely run thing at that, and I would have put Churchill third. Frank Whittle is on the list. Yes, Frank Whittle was actually fairly high on the list. I want to say he's around 35th or something like that. So, yeah. Anyway, it's like, this is what happens when you get, this is what happens when you open up voting to the public. You get Bodie McBoatface. So, there you go. So that's it for the questions. And I think, when will the King Knight in AI? I don't know. When he can kneel, I suppose. Anyway, that's it for the questions in the forum. So I'm going to call this one a night, I think. This show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who keep lights on and keep things going for us here. And we're very grateful for them as always. We will be back on Monday. And we're still trying to get this plugin to work for the membership thing, so I need to get in touch with our developer about that, and we're still trying to get the connection to Recurly to happen, so You know, it never ends. Every time we get to one plateau, it's just an entirely new plateau that just arrives, and it's just gets exhausting after a while. But that's what happens when you get a one-man show. You know, you get to work for yourself. Hooray! My boss is an idiot. That's the problem with being self-employed. Anyway, that'll do it for our show tonight, and we will see you guys on Monday night for your Stratosphere Studio.